for 3 p.m. so that the certainty about your programming in the studios will not be shaken, and it will be for an hour. So we'll make it very compact. That puts a burden of duty on our part to be here, and for you also to make your questions very compact so that the answers can come flowing. 1 hour, 3 to 4 p.m. going forward. I now invite the Secretary to Government, who is also the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, to make his remarks. SGF, sir.
Members of the Presidential Task Force, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, I welcome you all to the briefing of Thursday, 23rd April 2020. The Presidential Task Force wishes to continue to express appreciation to all Nigerians, and in particular our frontline health workers, including members of the press, for the tremendous work that is being done. We shall continue to count on this support and collaboration to confront the coronavirus pandemic, because it is only when we are together that we can defeat the virus completely. It is only a matter of time before this nightmare passes. The Presidential Task Force also continues to monitor and modify the strategy as development unfold. Our assessment of the impact of the lockdown is still ongoing, and I wish to confirm to you that the DG, SCDC, and the WHO representative have returned from their tour of 9 states, and their report will be received, evaluated, preparatory to making the appropriate recommendations. The PTF notes that the number of cases reported have risen to 873 across 25 states and the Federal Capital Territory, with 119 discharges and 28 fatalities. I have mentioned these numbers in order to underscore the need for citizens to comply with advisories strictly so that we can slow down the spread of the virus. These advisories still remain the most effective way of flattening the curve. The situation in Kano is still being assessed and monitored closely. Based on preliminary findings, the Presidential Task Force has directed that the Center for Disease Control to send an enhanced support team, mobilize resources for contact tracing, and immediately ensure necessary steps are taken in conjunction with the state government to contain the spread of the pandemic in Kano and stop the city from becoming the next epicenter. The Presidential Task Force views with some measure of concern the non-compliance by private medical facilities with the directive to seek accreditation before treating COVID-19 related cases. The highly infectious nature of COVID-19, if not well managed in a purpose-built facility and specialists in attendance, pose a lot of danger, not just to the medical staff in such hospitals, but also to other patients and loved ones at home. We therefore appeal strongly to operators of private medical facilities wishing to continue to treat COVID-19 cases to apply to the Federal Ministry of Health urgently for accreditation. The issue of stigmatization still persists, and it is counterproductive to our efforts. This disease does not discriminate on status, creed, tribe, or color, and anyone can be infected. It is my humble appeal Once you are infected by this disease, you should immediately report to appropriate medical facilities in your own interest and the interest of your loved ones. COVID-19 is not a condition, and there is no need to stigmatize anybody. I must remind all of us that over 90% of infected persons recover from this disease. In this regard, I urge all those who have recovered from this disease to continue to tell their stories, to encourage other persons to step forward to seek care and medical attention. The Presidential Task Force has continued to collaborate with governors in the various states, and the outcome of our conversation with the Nigerian Governors Forum yesterday, under the chairmanship of Governor of Ekiti, and the platform that was created for that discussion, we will form a critical part of recommendations to be made, Mr. President, in the coming days. Nigeria has continued to receive international support in the wake of this pandemic. We thank our development partners, public-spirited individuals, and corporate organizations for all the support that we have received in cash and kind. Earlier this morning, the ambassador of the People's Republic of China in Nigeria led the China-Nigeria Chamber of Commerce to present a symbolic check in the sum of 48,120,000 to the COVID Support Fund. This gesture underscores the deep relationship between Nigeria and China, and it is well appreciated. The ambassador has also informed the Presidential Task Force that the third phase of medical supplies from the government of China is ready for airlift. Arrangements will be made towards actualizing this. Let me emphasize that all donations go into various designated collection accounts opened by the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, which has been published, and swept into the Treasury Single Account TSA with the Central Bank of Nigeria on a daily basis. The PTF does not manage any of that COVID account-related donation of funds. Yesterday in my address, I thanked the President General of the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, His Eminence the Sultan of Sokoto, for endorsing the recommendations of the Emergency Fatwa Committee by directing the Ummah on the suspension of obligatory religious activities during the Ramadan. I wish to reiterate the importance of complying with these directives as a major thrust for the control of the spread of this pandemic. I implore all state governors once again to apply these directives in their states as they consider measures to be taken. May the Ramadan season be of immense blessings to our nation and the world. Finally, what I bring to Nigerians today is a message of hope and a message of strength. I encourage you to comply with all the advisories and to continue to be your brother's keepers, especially given the unintended impact of the lockdown on the poor, the needy, the aged, the vulnerable, persons living with disabilities, and the sick. This is the time to show the essence of the fear of God and the love for humanity in us. I now invite the Honorable Minister of Health to present his update for today. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Honorable Ministers here present, Directors, Directors General, ladies and gentlemen of the press. What I'm going to say rests on the very strong first part that the Secretary to the Government already mentioned. And as of today, the 23rd of April 2020, 873 people in 25 states and the Federal Capital Territory have been confirmed to have COVID-19 from 9,522 tests. The 91 additional confirmations are as follows: 74 in Lagos, 5 in Katsina, 4 in Ogun, 2 each in Delta and Edo, 1 each in Adamawa, Kwara, Oyo, and the FCT. 197 persons have been successfully treated for COVID-19 and discharged home, while 28 deaths have sadly been recorded. Like yesterday, the high number of new cases is a manifestation of more efficient testing, but also of ongoing community transmission. The federal government, through the Federal Ministry of Health and the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, continues to support preparedness and response to COVID-19 in all states and the FCD. Rapid response teams are working closely with state emergency operation centers to strengthen operation activities. Speaking about the structure of our response, which is to test, treat, trace, and isolate, the idea is to test people based on set criteria, such as travel history, contacts with persons who have traveled, the symptoms, or persons in clusters of those where there is high prevalence, and all this is for the prospects of high yield. Persons who test positive in treatment are placed in treatment and isolation, and we trace all their contacts and quarantine them for 14 days. Today, NCDC laboratories have capacity to test 1,500 samples per day in 13 laboratories across the country. However, we are testing an average of about 600 samples per day, because that is all the samples collected and sent for testing, which means that there is a certain underutilization, and the factors implicated in the process may include surveillance, sample collection, and mode of transportation, which can be improved upon to increase operational efficiency. This is where a little investment can help, and the results of such intensification of efforts can be seen especially in Lagos, where improved logistic management also increased sample collection and significantly reduced turnaround time. As we further increase our testing capacity and accredit more laboratories, and even more robust sample transportation and infrastructure will be put in place to promptly convey samples to any of the 13 laboratories that have been activated so far. Nigeria's strategy is to admit all persons who test positive for COVID-19 into designated accredited treatment facilities to contain the spread of the virus and ensure prompt management to forestall complications. I urge all individuals who test positive for COVID-19 to report at any of our designated isolation and treatment centers. The Federal Ministry of Health must be able to account for all infected persons and ascertain the containment of this infection. States are strongly encouraged to ensure that all persons who test positive for COVID-19 are admitted at the designated center, and to ensure that the public suffers no hazard from choices that individuals wish to make. The Federal Ministry of Health can assist all persons who are seeking privacy security, and anonymity to find the best treatment options. Contact tracing is key to containing the infection. As persons are confirmed positive for COVID-19, we trace all the contacts that they had in the preceding 14 days. This is a tedious and meticulous activity which is conducted by NCDC along with other the states concerned, and for which the cooperation of the public is always sought. Nigeria Center for Disease Control has finalized the contact tracing right guidelines with all states to actively aid this case finding. The other key factor I mentioned before in the response is where capacity is needed after positive testing. It is to isolate and treat all persons found to be positive for the virus. Especially challenging, as has been said here before, are persons who test positive but have mild or no symptoms, but they are infectious to others. These persons make up a good number of the cases we are handling in Nigeria, but they must nevertheless be referred to isolation and treatment centers with accredited infection prevention and control protocols. Failure to isolate such persons may constitute a risk, but also a risk to the individual himself, because his condition can change suddenly. Infection can persist in the community and transmission could continue if such persons continue to mingle in society. I applaud all our health workers in the front lines of COVID-19 pandemic, and the government will continue to provide you with the necessary personal protective equipment. I urge you all to take the necessary precautions for your own safety. Please do not try to treat patients without using adequate PPE, and frontline workers must undertake refresher courses, training in IPC at intervals. This advice is necessary due to the number of health workers who are tested positive. There are over 40 now, or others who have had to be quarantined in the last two weeks due to exposure and are therefore not able to contribute to the health sector effort. I urge you all to remain vigilant in line of duty and maintain, as I always say, a high index of suspicion. All citizens are once again, as I do every day, remind you to use a mask or face covering when leaving your residence, preferably, and also to practice hand and respiratory hygiene and physical distancing to avoid mass gathering and non-essential travels. Every travel you make nowadays, particularly if you're in a crowded bus or a crowded minivan, is a risk to you, because you will not know if whoever is sitting next to you is a silent positive. So avoid any travel and postpone any travel that is not a matter of life and death. Individual actions will determine the success of the actions being taken by government to stop the spread of COVID-19 is therefore a collective effort. If you suspect yourself or anyone around you may have symptoms that are suspicious, call the number we have always given, 112 or 0800 9700 0010. With time, you will be able to find that the activation of our ambulance service will be available to pick those who are with symptoms or those who have COVID-19 diagnosis to take them to treatment centers. Resources and real-time information can be found on the social media handles of Federal Ministry of Health and NCDC, and the Federal Ministry of Health website, and the NCDC COVID-19 microsite, which is COVID-19 ncdc.gov.ng. Please stay home, stay safe, and take precautions. Thank you.
Chair, honorable ministers, gentlemen and ladies of the press. Good to be back with you today. Like you know, I've just returned together with Dr. Fiona Braca, my colleague at the WHO, from a 4-day trip across 9 states of Nigeria. We started from Imo, went to Anambra, then down to Rivers, to Delta, Oyo, Ogun State, Katsina, and Kano, crossing almost all the geopolitical zones in Nigeria. The aim of this trip was really to gain a better understanding of the progress that we're making and the challenges that we face, the priorities and the issues at the subnational level in order to shape a better response. I must say the trip was eye-opening. We really saw firsthand incredible efforts being made across every state in Nigeria. In almost every state, the efforts was led on directly by their excellencies, the governors. In fact, we met almost all the governors wherever we went. We met His Excellency, Governor of Imo State, Hope Uzodimma. We met Willie Obianyo, His Excellency Governor Wike in Rivers, His Excellency Governor Kowa, His Excellency Governor Makinde. We met His Excellency Dapo Abiodun, His Excellency Governor Masari, as well as His Excellency finally in Kano State, the Ganduje. So in every state, welcomed us and shared openly the challenges they faced, the opportunities, their work over the last few weeks. And this is critical because for the work that we're doing, the implementation across board depends on the actions mostly at the state level. So their leadership has been critical. Almost every state has set up some form of a task force, often led by their deputy governors themselves. So this work is really translating to effect around the states. So secondly, on healthcare partnerships, what we really saw was in every state the mobilization of private sector resources, all the partners in the states doing whatever, coming together to work around this response. So none of us is alone in this. Just like we're preparing at the national level, bringing in everyone that we have access to, the states are doing the same, converting NYSC camps in some places, IDP camps in others, and in others just putting up new tents. So using whatever resources are available to them and making sure that they're deployed for this outbreak. The other thing we tried to do was to ensure that experience is shared among the states. Some of the states like Ogun and Lagos have started very early in the campaign to respond, not in the campaign, in the outbreak to respond, obviously because they had cases earlier. Now we're trying to avoid a situation where every state is learning the same lessons, the hard way. So we're trying to make sure that lessons learned in one state can be translated in the other state and be used to solve the same problems. Because across board, the problems are similar. So really, a lot of our mission was to share information, make sure that every state had the benefit of learning from other states, and therefore didn't have to solve the same problems over and over again. Of course, every state was also struggling with how to use their human resources and how to repurpose individuals doing different things. So developing staff capacity in IPC, in contact tracing and surveillance, in managing health, managing patients safely. All these were ideas that were shared. And we saw how a lot of the guidelines that we had developed at the national level were translated into guidelines at the local level and used in the different states. Now, critically, we also saw the emergence of this state task forces on COVID-19, and the great work they're doing on resource mobilization and on supporting the EOCs that were actually involved in managing the outbreaks. And we shared information that we had learned from some states in how to improve organizational efficiency, how to take decentralized efforts, and how to make sure everybody is working together. So on return, we are going to put our thoughts together. We have started doing this together with Dr. Braca, and that will feed into some of the decisions that will be made over the next weekend around the next few weeks. One thing I must say is that the entire country is in this together, and it was really gratifying to see the hopes, the energies, but also the challenges. It's not, our country is big, complex, diverse, but across every state we visited, we saw a determination to get ahead of this curve and to make sure that we come out of it stronger. So I'll be willing to answer any questions during the session on the differences in the response in the different states, and open to any discussions further on the great work being done at the state level. I'll use the last few minutes to really say thank you to the Nigerian Air Force. Hardly have I ever been exposed to a group of Nigerians so committed to their work, absolutely punctual, humble, and dedicated to the service of our country, and I'm very grateful together with the team for the excellent service they provided to us over the past 4 days. Thank you very much.
The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Honorable Ministers, members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID, ladies and gentlemen of the press, good afternoon. I would like to first of all start by informing you that the PTF continues to engage very closely with state governments. We are particularly pleased to note the decision by the Nigeria Governors Forum to restrict interstate travel. This is really important when it comes to reducing the risk of interstate spread and transmission of the virus. The Honorable Minister and the DG and CDC have already spoken about the additional support to Kano. The PTF has directed, and in line with the directive, NCDC has already redeployed at least 17 persons, including 7 from the WHO to Kano, to deal with the current issues that have arisen. In addition to this, the DG and CDC has worked with the State Emergency Operating Center to reorganize the way it functions, and a joint team together with that from the state government is currently investigating the concerns with regards to deaths. Additional lab equipments have also been sent to Kano yesterday, but the Kano lab at the moment is closed for the next few days while fumigation and disinfection is ongoing. It's extremely important that we continue to measure and stop community spread. We cannot do this without the cooperation of the public. We continue to call on the public to please restrict and stay where they are. It is important. It's a temporary sacrifice for the long-term benefit of all of us. In terms of the issue of testing, we note that some states continue to have a low level of testing for the virus. You will not have a case if you have never tested for it. We are encouraging the state emergency operating centers to actively look for cases in the community, and especially those presenting with symptoms consistent with COVID or those having unusual respiratory illnesses in the hospitals, and actively go out to test these people, because this is the only way we can interrupt transmission. And the earlier we do this, the better overall. We know that some symptoms can be quite vague, but there are classical symptoms such as a fever, which is seen in up to 90% of cases, a cough that is seen in 2/3 of cases, and a shortness of breath in about 1/3 of cases. Other unusual symptoms might include a loss of smell, what we call anosmia, which is increasingly being seen to be specific for COVID compared to other viral infections, upper respiratory viral infections. Finally, I would like to talk about Ramadan and specifically reiterate the need for Muslim faithfuls to practice all acts of ibadah and salawat within their homes as we look forward to the commencement of Ramadan, hopefully tomorrow, Friday or Saturday. I'd like to remind the public that these are unusual times, these are challenging times, there are times that we must act accordingly in order to control the spread of the virus. As we're seeing Ramadan tomorrow, we need to make sure that we protect ourselves so that we are around next year to observe another Ramadan. On behalf of the PTF, we wish our Muslim brothers and sisters Ramadan Kareem. Thank you.
Thank you. We have finished phase one. We shall now take the questions. Our colleagues, are you ready?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Friday. I'm a reporter with Channels TV. I will direct my first question to the DG of NCDC. You made a visit to Kano State, among the states that you visited. I would like to hear from you the first-hand information you got from them regarding the multiple deaths and other issues that has to do with COVID-19. The second question, I would like the SGF to respond to it. You said that the resolutions that you reached during the meeting with the NGF, the Nigeria Governors Forum, will form critical part of the recommendations that the PTF will submit to the President. Now, part of the resolution from that NGF meeting is the recommendation for interstate lockdown. Are you telling us that that will be part of the critical recommendation you will make to the President? I would also like to ask the Minister of Foreign Affairs to respond to this. This is a viewer from Liverpool, United Kingdom, who sent this in to Channels TV. He said, 4 weeks after completing the application form for evacuation and also asking them to pay £350, with each of them agreeing to pay for their flight ticket, they also agree that they will pay the expenses of isolation. Nothing has been heard from the Nigerian government. We'd like you to respond to that. What is happening? And finally, sir, the situation room report of NCDC shows that 26% of infection actually have no contact. They have no history of travel. Now, it means that we have huge number of community transmission. Now, bearing that in mind, would you not recommend that we should make testing, especially in those states with high burden, mandatory? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amaka Ode. I report for Arise News. My first question actually goes to the Minister of Health. Sir, I want to get an update from you concerning some Nigerians who have actually come out and said that they're working on vaccines, and some of them said they even have come up with vaccines for coronavirus. Especially, I want to mention Professor Maurice Iwu. So I want to know if your ministry has been in contact with him and other Nigerians who are working or have come up with some vaccines, as we've seen in other countries like Madagascar. The president is the one who's championing a local solution to coronavirus. So I'd like to get an update on that. And my next question will be to the DG of the NCDC. Well, good to have you back. Well, Friday has actually asked one of my questions, which has got to do with Kano State. But plus, I also want to find out where we are in terms of how many tests we've actually carried out in the country so far since the pandemic started. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Rachel Abuja from the News Agency of Nigeria, and my question is for the DG NCDC. Sir, new findings reveal that saliva has a better yield as a sample than other specimens. What are we doing about this finding to improve access to our test for the virus? Meanwhile, I would like to know who is responsible for the validation of rapid test kits for COVID in Nigeria, and how many have undergone trials? Many thanks.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Helen Samede Akins. So I want to know what the task force is doing to check the SSs of uniformed men in this lockdown. Only recently, it was reported that a petrol attendant was killed while offering essential services in Aba? Thank you.
Good afternoon, sirs. My name is Juliana Taiwo Baloye. I write for the Sun newspapers. SGF, sir, or maybe the coordinator, the NLC has written to the PTF on COVID-19, warning against further extension of this lockdown. We'd like to get the task force reaction. DG, sir, in your speech, you noted that you have states have their own task force on COVID. Beyond the daily briefing via the media, reports out there is that there is no collaboration nor synergy between the PTF and the state's task force. What official channels are you using to communicate with this task force? The question is, how do we want to contain the spread if we are not synergizing? The SGF and probably the Minister of Foreign Affairs, China has given us money and they are promising more on the way. The question is, we are seeing what they are doing to Africans in China. We hope this is not a way of shutting our mouth to condemn what they are doing. We'd like to hear from the government what the government is doing to tell China that Africans, indeed Nigeria, is unhappy with what is happening there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sirs. My name is Nancy Oyedia Orum from AIT. My question goes to the Minister of Health. Sir, the index case of coronavirus in Nigeria was reported, I think, on the 27th of February, and that of South Africa was reported on the 5th of March. But I've actually noticed that South Africa, up to date, have tested about 130,000 persons from 5th to date. We have countries like Ghana also who, during that time frame, also got their index case. They are right now at 30,000 to about 60,000 cases that they have tested. My question is, could it be that we have tested more people than the NCDC has reported, or are there lessons we can learn from some of these countries on strategies that they are putting in place to ensure that we measure up with some of these countries? My second question, sir, is also for you. Recently, the Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, announced that hazard allowance has been approved for medical personnel and doctors also. But I'm a bit confused. He said there are three categories. There are some people who are getting 70%. There are also other people who get 40%. And there are also health workers who get 10%. So I just want to get a clarification why that is like that. So while I was seated here, one of the parents sent me a message and said some private schools, I don't know, the Minister of Education is not here, but so you can relay it back to him. One of the parents said most private schools are mandating their students to pay 1,000 naira daily for online classes. I don't know if the SGF can do something about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have taken all the questions for today. They are directed at the Honorable Minister of Health, the Director General, NCDC, the National Coordinator, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Honorable Minister of State for Education is not here. And the SGF will wrap up the answer session after the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. We'll begin with the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you for the questions that came up. The first has to do with local answers to the coronavirus. The coronavirus has been clearly stated as a new virus. Nobody knows well, at the beginning nobody knew anything, but now we know a bit more about it. But there's likely a lot more to be learnt about it and about its behavior. And scientists all over the world are working at high pace, some at feverish pace, to try to find answers. Among the answers they're looking for are vaccines. Some are looking for medicines that are going to be efficacious. And there are others who are looking for various herbs and other kinds of, let us say, support that could help to cure it. The other day, somebody was asking about some ginger and things that have been used and black seed. But all our attempts, they're good attempts. Every attempt is welcome. And I've said here before that we have departments in the Ministry of Health for traditional and complementary medicine and alternative medicine, which will look at all suggestions and all things that are put out there as possibilities for handling coronavirus. We don't throw away any idea. So we pass any idea, any suggestions coming from the traditional side, we know where to refer it to for investigation, and others are referred this way. So we can only guess where the answer will come from, but all are welcome to try. Right now, we do not have any traditional medicine that I know of that actually works. Some may help to boost your immunity, but that is not something that we can prove. With rapid test kits, the World Health Organization has not validated any of it. They believe that the results are not reliable. You can do it, it probably gives you a direction, but I'm told by those who have evaluated that even the manufacturers tell you that after you do this test, please go and verify. So there is not enough faith in rapid diagnostic test to be able to rely on it. So if you did a test and it told you you were positive or negative, you were not sure. And I think that this illness is so such that you really want a secure result that is true, not to be misled. Now, with regard to the case that came in on the 27th February, and then it came a little later in South Africa, well, what remember is that both were brought in by people coming from Italy. That's all we know. But since then, we've followed different trajectories. I think all countries develop their own strategy on how to approach these things. In Nigeria, we try to, some people talk about flattening the curve. We try to push the curve to one side so that we have time to prepare our not very strong health system. And also because at the time we had challenges for reagents, the first country to have reagents was South Africa. And our very first option at the very beginning in testing was to send our samples, in fact, to South Africa until we started getting our own reagents and we got the nursing training to be able to do our own tests. And between then and now, within 2 months, we already have 13 laboratories working. In fact, we have excess capacity for those laboratories that are functioning. But our own strategy, again, because we have to be very careful about reagents, even at the beginning, was a very careful strategy of what I call smart testing. You are testing where you think you get a yield. Some countries decide to do blanket testing. You could drive in, give your sample, and so on. And other countries started complaining that the yield was too small. They were wasting cartridges, and these reagents are too expensive. Some people learned the hard way, but we do what we call smart testing. You have a travel history, you have a contact, and that was in the first phase. Now we're worrying about community transmission. We're looking at persons who have symptoms. If you have symptoms that remind us of coronavirus, you'll be tested. If you're also resident in an area where there's a cluster of persons who have had it, then you're also eligible to be tested. But that is try to use your resources as wisely as possible. Remember, we also have a country of nearly 200 million, and we have to be ready to be able to cater to all of them. So we are having different approaches which would not allow us to actually compete in the testing. And we'll also be extremely stringent in the way we pursue the cases that we find. Remember, we're among the first to start screening at the airport when this disease was first mentioned. And we also were doing very stringent contact tracing, for which I really praise the Lagos State Public Health Department and also the NCDC. They did a very nice job there, for which we are very proud. So that's the reason why we have the statistics that we have. As for the hazard allowance, yes, there's a conversation around it. It has not yet, whatever the proposals are have to be validated by the PTF. They have also to be validated by other authorities like the Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, and so on. So other processes that will take place before it is announced. But it is a work in progress. It is not going to be hidden. I think that's all that concerns the Ministry of Health. Thank you.
So thank you. Friday, yes, we're all worried about, anxious about Kano. But just like a crime scene investigation, these things take time. So we need time. So we got into Kano, we had there have been a few reports of deaths. The first thing we do in any field epi investigation is to verify what we're doing and to see whether what is being reported is actually the case. So that's what we're doing at the moment. We have a team working with the government of Kano State to verify the incident and make sure that what is going on is actually what is being reported. Then we'll carry out control measures and see if it's an infectious disease, if it's COVID, if it's something else. These are things that are now happening in Kano. But generally, what we saw, like I said, was, Kano was, unlike Lagos, that had a gradual increase in cases. The cases really increased rapidly in Kano. So suddenly they were faced with a situation, you have 20 cases today, you're trying to bring them in, the next day you have 30, you're trying to bring them in, the next day you have another 30. So it's not a very simple thing to manage. So what we sat down with them, improve the organizational efficiency of the response, the leadership of the EOC, we sat down the whole night trying to reorganize how they were working. I think you'll see the results over the next few days. The other thing, we actually went to the treatment center itself, and we saw a very committed group of clinicians. And so the treatment center was actually excellent. They have a capacity at the moment for over 300. So there are many aspects of the response that had gone well. There are others that were scaling up. And in the middle of all of this, there was this crisis about death. So I think, just like we saw with Lagos a while ago, very soon we'll also be in the same position with Kano, improving from an initial bumpy ride to a much more smoother response. So the other question was around community transmission and making testing mandatory. Friday, I don't think any country, even the most resourced ones in the world, have made testing mandatory. If you know of any, please, I'll be interested in knowing. We have a very good strategy around testing. Yes, the numbers are always being thrown at us, Ghana, South Africa, but we're not playing a numbers game. We're not playing a numbers game. These are people. They're human beings. Before you test anyone, we go through a risk assessment to make sure it's appropriate to test you. Up till recently, we had about 5,000 tests, but in the last week, we've gone up from 5,000 to 10,000. So if you imagine from the beginning of the outbreak till last week, we tested 5,000. Then in the last week, we've tested another 5,000. And we're going to continue scaling our testing rapidly. We've just got in the first set of regions for high throughput testing. So I think there'll be a change in the numbers. But to be honest, I'm not playing a numbers game with testing. We'll have a strategy, we'll stick to that strategy and make sure we deliberately increase the number of tests, but while testing the right people at the right time. Thanks, Rachel, on your question on saliva. I'm really impressed by your readership of a newly published peer-reviewed articles. Yes, we saw that paper. It contradicts some of the previous knowledge that we had, that nasopharyngeal swabs are really the best. So we're looking at it and then we'll make a decision. Actually, taking saliva samples are a lot easier than taking nasopharyngeal swabs. So if that's the case, it will make our life a lot easier moving forward. Now, the question on RDTs and who is responsible for the validation. It's a joint effort. The primary responsibility is with the Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria, but they don't have samples. So they have to work with the clinicians that have the samples, that collect the samples from patients. The clinicians have to get a research protocol approved. So that's where the Nigeria Health Research Ethics Committee comes in. Once they do all of that, they have to take it to NAFDAC for approval. So you can see that there's no one organization that can do all of it. So it's a very tedious process. I know that right now MLSCN is working on it, and I actually spoke with the chief executive this morning around the processes to do that for RDTs. I think the final question was on synergy between states and federal. I think there's actually great synergy. We speak with the states at various levels, teleconferences all the time. I lead on the technical side. The leaders of the PTF, of course, have the discussion on the leadership of the task force side. So, it is a complex response, and we have 36 plus 1 states in Nigeria to coordinate with. So we're trying very hard to improve that coordination, but I don't think there was any problem with synergy. In fact, I think all the governors that we saw over the last 4 days, we're very happy with the level of collaboration we have achieved since this outbreak started. So I think I've answered all the questions. Thank you very much.
So I think most of the questions I had appear to have been answered, but I'll just add clarity to a few. Regarding the saliva test, just to say that the article, the work is actually not peer-reviewed yet. It's a preprint, so it's yet to be validated in terms of publication. But there are a few saliva test kits that are being licensed at the moment in the US. And if that particular publication is medically validated via publication through a peer-reviewed process, then that would definitely help us, because it will improve the likelihood of increased testing and reduce the need for things like swabs and PPE, because you have to wear PPE in order to take the sample, etc. And it will be very much welcome. So just watch this space. In terms of the access of security agencies, as the public know, we have been engaging closely with the security agencies, and we continue to ask them to respect the exemptions placed by Mr. President on the lockdown. There are clear exemptions that have been elucidated, and we will continue to work closely with the security agencies, including the IG of police, to make sure that people's rights are respected. So the issue of NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress, writing against further extension of the lockdown. So the PTF takes its responsibility very seriously. We know that we're in challenging times. We know how difficult it is for the public to stay at home, the restrictions that are in place. We will be looking at all the evidence in terms of the impact of the lockdown over the last 4 weeks on the epidemic itself, and balance it with other issues before we make recommendations to Mr. President. Whatever recommendations we'll make will be in the best interest of the country and the people of Nigeria. Finally, the issue of synergy between PTF and state governments. So as the DG and CDC said, we are working actually very closely with state governments. We have meetings with the state commissioners of health, and we're just about to activate a link with the state PTF, state government task force leads, so that we can continue to have that synergy. The chair of the SGF, the chair of the PTF just attended a meeting yesterday with the Nigeria Governors Forum. Both the DG and myself have been attending meetings with the NGF. So that synergy is there. We will continue to strengthen it and make sure that state governments take the necessary steps to control this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the Minister of Information and Culture before we take the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Honorable Minister of Information and Culture.
Thank you very much. I think I want to react to the question about the fellow that was killed in Abia State. I know that the task force will meet regularly with the security chiefs, and we always implore them to ensure that the officers, while they are very fair in maintaining the lockdown, must also be very humane. But the particular instance referred to, the petrol attendant was not killed by the policeman. Facts that are in our possession is that a policeman hit somebody riding a keke. People were protesting. It was during the protest that another motorist hit the petrol attendant. Well, it does not matter who killed him. A life is a very precious thing. We regret it, but we just want to establish the facts of the matter, that the petrol attendant actually died when he was hit by an oncoming vehicle during the protest. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Good evening, everybody. The question was in respect of somebody in the UK who paid £350 4 weeks ago with the hope of being evacuated from the UK. Well, first of all, when we made the announcement that we were trying to assess, first of all, how many Nigerians were in various countries and wanted to come home, we pointed out that all communication should be with the High Commission, and at no time did the High Commission or did any directives emanate from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that Nigerians should take tests. So, where the £350 for tests came from, I really don't know, but it certainly was not from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, nor from our various embassies and high commissions. Now, of course, there are various stages that one had to go through. The first was to the process of collation of the numbers of people who wanted to come in different countries, because there are Nigerians all over the world. And once we began to get a sense of the numbers, the next stage was obviously, or well, in parallel to that, trying to see which airlines and how we could actually convey them back to Nigeria. And that has been a longish process because, of course, we didn't want to have a situation where, those who wanted to come back could not afford the tickets. We explored the possibility of bringing them back free of charge. Unfortunately, the funding was not available. The resources were not available for that. So we had to, negotiate with airlines, and then, also making sure that, we have in place the centers where they would stay when they came back. So this has really been the process. It has not been, an easy one, trying to get all that together. And as I reported yesterday, we still need a little bit more time to have all the, all the accommodation, hotels and things ready. There are some issues that we were experiencing, finding hotels and so forth, but we feel that, getting over the most difficult part, and that within 2 weeks, hopefully, we should start the process. But again, the capacity, the numbers that we can bring back at any given time are limited. And at the moment, we just have the capacity to take about 200 to 250 people in Lagos at any given time, and then 200 to 250 for Abuja. But since then, there have been other developments. United Emirates is also is putting planes at the disposal of Nigerians in Dubai, and we're just looking for clearance and approval. Various Nigerians have bought their tickets. The planes are here to be ready to convey them here, and so we are now just fine-tuning, all the requisite approvals, and then that might already actually be the first one to bring Nigerians home, even before we have gone out to bring them back. The other question was in respect of medical assistance being provided by China, especially in the context of the discrimination, or the cases of discrimination and racism that's been taking place in the country. Now, we have been engaging with the Chinese government at various levels. At the level of our consulate in Guangzhou, which is where these cases of discrimination and racism have been taking place, and also at the federal level in China, in Beijing, with our ambassador and our embassy in Beijing. Now, we've made it clear to the Chinese government in no uncertain terms, unequivocally, that under no circumstance will we accept racial discrimination against Nigerians or indeed Africans or blacks in China. That is a red line for us. They have in turn told us that there is no case of that ongoing. But clearly, we are seeing videos. I have received reports, and we've told them it's unacceptable. And, we're also engaging with other African countries to decide and work together on definitive steps and measures that we will take because of this situation. In addition, I have directed our consulate in Guangzhou to systematically detail every single case of discrimination and every single case of loss or damage suffered by any Nigerian. And we will pursue each and every single one very robustly with the Chinese government. If it requires, compensation and damages, etc. So for us, as I said, it's a red line, and we're going to fight it to the very end. We're extremely disappointed because we have excellent relations with the government and people of China that such a thing can happen at this stage. And, when there were calls for travel to be banned to China, when we had the outbreak in Wuhan and so forth, we went along with the World Health Organization's advice, not to place a ban on China, and we showed, real solidarity, because we've also had our own experience of epidemics with Ebola and so forth. But really, we're deeply, deeply wounded by what has happened to Nigerians and other Africans in China. Of course, the government has given us explanations and so forth, but really, it is something we never expected, and we will pursue it to its final conclusion. And we will not make any compromises in doing so. There have been some comments in the public domain as if our policy is somehow, that we're held somehow hostage by the fact that, we have received a lot of cooperation, economic cooperation from China in the past. But I can assure you that where this is concerned, we are going to pursue it to its very end, and irrespective of whatever economic cooperation we have with China. Because in the world of today, we absolutely will not and cannot tolerate and accept any form of racism or discrimination against blacks, against Africans. And as the largest black country in the world, African country in the world, it behoves on us to be at the front line in defending the dignity of blacks and Africans everywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall now take the SGF.
There was a question that had to deal with the issue of request by the governors for a 2-week extension of the lockdown, but with specific emphasis on interstate travels. Well, that's a proposal coming from the governors. It was a decision they took. All the 36 governors were on their video conferencing yesterday when they had their meeting. They took that decision. And when I joined with a set of the governors, with the vice president and the minister for health and minister for finance, later with the governor of the central bank later in the evening, they did indicate that one of the resolutions they took when they had their conference yesterday was specifically to request that an extension be given with specific emphasis on interstate travels. Basically what they are suggesting is that travels from one state to the other should be stopped with certain exemptions of essential services, petroleum products, farm inputs, fertilizer, so that we can keep the wheel of our economy running. Like I said, that is their proposal. Federal government is yet to take it. Mr. President, the presidential task force will meet and take a holistic look at all the proposals that are the next line of action going forward. This will look that's what I want to show you. We are working instead and collaborating with the state government and the national entities. And by the time with this phase going into the last phase, we will more approaching our decision or taking into consideration the inputs and the interests of different segments of our society. And then, there's no prayer for people. I don't know the reason why I was slightly late to this press conference, but because the president of the NTA, and Ibawaba was with me, come to see me. They had written a letter, quite all right, but also in the same manner, suggesting ways. They represent the working class. They also listen to what is happening. They see what is happening in different clubs. Ayuba Waba is not only the president of NLC, he is also the international president of the labor movement. I believe that he is consulting all over the world, listening to his workers in different countries, and also taking experiences of how other nations are dealing with the lockdown, because virtually the entire world is on a lockdown. Some who had the infection earlier are beginning to ease up the lockdown as they move, as they have succeeded in flattening the curves, and they begin to move into bringing their nations back into productive sessions, and also getting their systems back into life. So there's no threat from labor. We are consulting with them. They have opinion. They share with us. And at the end of the day, at every step of what we have done thus far, we have kept contact with the working class to ensure that at least their views are adequately taken and represented. The one that has to do with private schools, unfortunately, the Minister of State Education is not here, and I don't run a private school. I wouldn't know how that can happen, that they will demand for payment from their people. I think the objective of running a school is to ensure that you bring up leaders, you train them well, they pass their examinations at different levels. It's a thing of pride for every school to make sure that their pupils do very well and prepare them for examination. So I wouldn't be able to know, but I would draw the attention of the Honorable Minister of State Education to this, to see if he can verify, try to establish if such a thing is happening. He would want to know the justification for it. Because these same people have paid school fees, but they are not in school. So, I mean, any other extra payment would amount to double payment because they are paid. I still have a teenager that goes to secondary school, and I know that I've paid the school fees for this time. So if he's not being taught, can I be asked to pay another fee? I think it is just reasonable that parents should not be put under that pressure because they have paid their fees. They have truly paid their fees, and the teaching is not going on, not as a result of anybody's fault, but the coronavirus has come upon us. As we proceed, I can assure you that we'll be looking at what is happening in different climes and see what best model we would adopt going forward, what has happened in different countries that have had experiences. And the experiences are different. Before I came in, I got a paper, I got some magazines from one of these countries that came out of the pandemic quite fast. This is from the nation, the Republic of Korea. They said the title is Flattening the Curve on COVID-19, and it's dated April 15, 2020. How Korea responded to the pandemic using ICT. And they gave 5 steps, all ICT driven. ICT did social distancing, ICT did the tracing, ICT did the testing, ICT did everything. So every country has its own experience. We believe that even within the Nigerian context, we have our own experience. And whatever final decision we will take going forward will be informed by the experiences that we have garnered over the course of the last 2 months as we have dealt with this pandemic as it has afflicted our nation. But be rest assured that whatever is decided finally will be for the good of our people, for the good and health and wealth of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of today's national briefing. Let me remind you again that going forward, this briefing will take place 3 p.m. each day or on any other appointed day should the need arise, and that it will be for 1 hour. This will help your programming and this will help for other planning as well. The message is coming out today, very simple. It's just that we must come together and take responsibility to stop community spread. This is what we are experiencing now is a temporary sacrifice for long-term benefits for all. Again, the message of hope, the message of strength, resilience, and need for compliance with advisories are all out there. Please obey them. It will be for our own benefit. We want to thank our partners, the media partners, NAPTIP and Site Savers for the sign language, and for all Nigerians that have been following this and sending questions from home. We want to thank you very much. We shall see you tomorrow by the grace of God. God bless Nigeria.
There is so much misinformation and distortion out there, especially on the social media. All it takes is just a click, and the fake news goes viral.
Hello and thanks for joining us on Nationwide. We're live on the network service of the NTA. I'm Hawa Salihu Adama. As at 11:25 p.m. of April the 22nd, 2020, 91 new cases of COVID-19 was reported in Nigeria. The new cases bring the total number of confirmed cases in Nigeria to 873. The breakdown of the newly confirmed cases are as follows: 74 in Lagos, 5 in Katsina, 4 in Ogun State, 2 in Edo State, 2 in Delta State, and 1 each in Kwara, Oyo, FCT, as well as Adamawa. We now join Mitaire Ikpen, who is standing by at the PTF Briefing Center here in the Federal Capital Territory, with highlights of today's briefing.
Okay, thank you very much, Hawa. The Presidential Task Force today felicitated with Muslims all over the country as they prepare to commence the Ramadan fast, and it advises the Muslim Ummah to ensure that all advisories concerning the coronavirus pandemic are adhered to, especially as the country at this moment guards against the trend of community transmission. And again, the situation in Kano continues to be of concern to the Presidential Task Force, and it says it has intensified contact tracing in Kano, especially with a view to getting all those who are suspected to have the coronavirus, and also to prevent the city from becoming the next epicenter of the coronavirus in Nigeria. The Presidential Task Force said additional test kits and lab equipment have been dispatched to Kano. However, it says that the molecular laboratory in Kano is still closed for decontamination, which is ongoing.
Okay, thank you, Mitari. I was just wondering if any decision was taken on schools adopting online learning and also asking or requesting that parents pay for that.
The Minister of Education was not around to answer a question on that today, but we know that the ministry already said that it has already begun online educational services in about 15 states. And just to also add, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs today used the opportunity to strongly condemn reports of discrimination against Nigerians in China. It says that it has received reports of racist treatments being meted out to Nigerians in China. And about now, I am being joined by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Oyama, who is going to throw more light into this issue of racial discrimination in China. Thank you for joining us on Nationwide, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, please, can you throw more light? What kind of discriminatory treatments are being meted out to Nigerians in China from reports that you've received?
Yes, okay. There was a question of Nigerians being removed from their accommodation and residences and not being able to go back in. Landlords no longer letting property to them, and a number of them found themselves in the streets. There are the cases of taking blood in hospital, which we did not know was a means of testing. And there's also stories of the ban of Nigerians in shops, restaurants, and malls. So, and the narratives, have been consistent. And we've spoken to our officials there, and they're telling us that indeed that was what has been happening.
But Nigeria, like you alluded to, has excellent relations with China. So what brought about this twist in our relationship?
Well, twist in our relationship, Chinese claim that there were some passengers that came on a flight, amongst the last flights that came into China from Africa, and that a significant number of them tested positive for the COVID-19, among which were also a significant number of Nigerians. And so for that reason, they put in place a very robust mechanism of containment, isolation and contact tracing. And that it was in the context of that, so for them, these were measures, to secure those who were tested positive and also to secure the city.
So what is being done to put our relations back on track?
Well, first and foremost, those Nigerians who are there must not be discriminated against. That's just the bottom line, The relationship at the national level is good. But of course, this element is extremely troubling and is something that could, of course, impact, on the bilateral relations between the two countries. China is also a sort of a federation. You have the central government and then you have the provinces. So this is in a province, and obviously there are measures being taken at that level. But nevertheless, we all know that the central government has a very important sway. So they are doing everything in their powers, they're telling us, and some people are confirming that, to address in a manner more humanely those issues. We can understand that a country needs to take measures to secure the health and security, of its citizens, But it's when those measures become discriminatory that we have problems.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Howard. That's much from here at this time.
Thank you very much, Mitari. And moving on, President Muhammadu Buhari has called on fellow ECOWAS leaders to look beyond the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and tap into various opportunities that it presents for the betterment of lives in member countries. Speaking at an extraordinary ECOWAS summit on COVID-19 held via teleconferencing, President Buhari appealed for more collaboration to save the region from the deadly pandemic through sharing of experiences and best practices. And in the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has been elected to lead other leaders in the West African sub-region in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The decision was taken at the extraordinary summit of the ECOWAS held via teleconferencing. The Nigeria Governors Forum is sustaining far-reaching measures in curbing the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Abubakar Usman Akwanga reports that the commitment was strengthened during the forum's 6th teleconferencing meeting.
In a 7-paragraph communique issued at the end of the 6th teleconference meeting, the forum resolved to sustain partnership with federal government, multilateral organizations, and the private sectors across 25 states to contain the ravaging COVID-19, with emphasis on community response to transmission. The forum also resolved to work closely with the Nigerian Center for Disease Control to ensure adequate supply of personal protective equipment to prevent the lives of those in the front line of the fight against the pandemic. The Governors Forum, through its chairman and governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, says a strategic partnership with the Presidential Task Force will be sustained and also agreed to the implementation of interstate lockdown to mitigate spread of the virus. The forum commiserated with President Muhammadu Buhari and the country over the demise of the Chief of Staff, late Malang Abba Kyari, and others who lost their lives from the deadly virus, and observed a minute silence in repose of their souls. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTA News.
And China is scaling up efforts to build a new image in the fight against coronavirus on the global stage, as the Asian country increases assistance and donations of medical supplies to countries affected by COVID-19, including Nigeria. The latest of the supplies comes from the China General Chamber of Commerce in Nigeria. Usman Aliyu has that.
Chinese support to Nigeria comes amid worrying rise in the number of infections registered in recent days across states. With the efforts by the federal and state governments in adopting sweeping measures to contain community transmission, the demand for medical equipment are increasingly needed at this moment. The Chinese government this time, through its Chamber of Commerce, donated respirators and surgical masks, gloves, gowns, goggles, infrared thermometers and shoes to Nigeria.
Despite the daunting task remaining at home, China firmly supports Nigeria's fight against the outbreak and stands ready to assist, if needed, to the best of its ability.
And in this war against the virus, we should protect each other and we should assist each other.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says Nigeria identifies with China for its rapid response and transparency exhibited in fighting the pandemic.
You have also provided us with assistance, technical assistance in terms of manpower. Nigeria is very grateful for this. The PTF is very grateful.
Nigeria is also asking for more post-COVID-19 interventions to jumpstart the economy. In Abuja, Usman Aliyu, NTA News.
And we told you earlier that President Muhammadu Buhari has been elected to lead other leaders in the West African sub-region in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Let's hear more from the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina.
Challenge that COVID-19 has posed to economies in West Africa was discussed back and forth, and there were articulations of what to do to combat COVID and what to do post-COVID, which is very important. That is what is expected of leadership, to think ahead. So the West African leaders discussed how to tackle the period of COVID-19 and what to do post-COVID. Now, at the end of it all, it was decided that there should be a champion who will lead the response of the sub-region. And that champion is President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria. So our president is going to lead the response of West Africa to the challenge of COVID-19.
And state governments in Nigeria say efforts are being intensified to contain the coronavirus pandemic in the country at the subnational levels. Speaking on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria, which continued discussion on COVID-19 situation reports in states, they revealed that there is increased awareness campaign to help citizens adhere to hygiene practices and social distancing. Olusheye Adeagbo has more.
We are instituting community surveillance, ensuring that we are following, actively searching for these cases and ensure that they are put under treatment. So many fake news are coming out of Kano.
Dr. Tijani Hussaini, coordinator Kano State Technical Response Team on COVID-19, speaking on the recent fatalities and the suspension of testing in the state. Sokoto State has recently appeared on the list of states with COVID-19 cases, and the state's chairman, Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Muhammadu Ali Nami, explains how measures have been intensified on contact tracing.
We are trying to find out where this index gets infected. Otherwise, I think we have to agree with the fact that there is some level of community transmission in the state.
Representatives from Delta State and the FCT also expressed various engagements in containing the spread of COVID-19 at their separate levels, with some challenges still hampering their efforts.
We've been able to also maintain a very high level of surveillance on the contact persons.
When you get to the communities, they are not interested in testing. They are more interested in the palliative. So FCT administration has started distributing palliatives.
The guest believes stopping the spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria and even ending its scourge can be realized with continuous support from the federal government and adequate cooperation from the public. In Abuja, Olusheye Adeagbo, NTA News.
We take some messages now. Nationwide returns shortly.
Fellow Nigerians, follow the instructions on social distancing. The irresponsibility of the few can lead to the death of many. Your freedom ends where other people's rights begin. The security agencies have risen to the challenges posed by this unprecedented situation with gallantry, and I commend them. I urge them to continue to maintain utmost vigilance, firmness, as well as restraint in enforcing the restriction orders while not neglecting statutory security responsibilities.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic we are currently challenged with, we at Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society enjoin all Muslims to adhere strictly to government directives geared towards stopping the spread of the virus. These measures include the stay-at-home order, washing of hands with soap and water, using hand sanitizers where water is not available, and other hygiene measures. We remind you all of the words of Allah in the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 195, which says, "And do not throw yourselves with your own hands hands into destruction. We also remind you of the hadith of the noble Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which says, do not cause harm or return harm. Please stay at home and stay safe with continuous dua. This message is from Project Itfine of Al-Habibiyah Islamic Society. Al-Habibiyah Islamic Society, from Allah to you, a light.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
Inside my house again. This thing not the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take care of it. How's one of the parents?
Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akin Fateh Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
What be this coronavirus thing? Not true?
You see this coronavirus will be COVID-19. Now the whole world palava. And it don't they kill many people for China, Italy, UK, US, Spain, and even for other countries them.
Okay, what can be the reason why they say make everybody tanda for house?
Now because if they waka pium go carry them from person we don't get them, you go carry come give your family them. Now so the thing take they kill other people for other countries.
Okay, what can be that social distancing self?
You see social distance. Now make we no come close because this thing now from air and touch now with the contact. We suppose they at least 6 foot away from each other every time.
So okay, no be only to wash your hand and to sanitize them alone.
Make we not take this washing of hand thing take play, but make we come together, join hand as we take pursue Ebola, pursue this coronavirus. Make we be each other be keepers now.
In the face of the coronavirus pandemic, absolute precaution is needed to curb spread of the virus. It therefore becomes imperative that already used personal protective equipment should be appropriately disposed of to prevent the public from contracting the disease. Kenneth Nanim has more.
Face masks, hand gloves, coverall, aprons, and footwears are personal protective equipment worn by health workers, especially those that work at infectious disease control centers. The essence is to prevent them from getting infected by whatever disease they are treating. In the wake of coronavirus pandemic, everyone is being advised to apply protective measures to avoid spread and contraction of the virus. However, inappropriate disposal of these protective kits could lead to the spread of the virus.
When you are disposing PPE, you need to ensure there are special rooms to do the disposal. We call it doffing of the gown. So when you want to remove this, you need to get a particular infectious waste bin where you can put it, and you ensure that you remove the PPE under the supervision or guidance of your colleagues or even a senior colleague, so that whenever there is a break in any stage of putting it on and removing it, the person will be able to guide you and the correction will be made immediately.
Just right here is a disposed, used face mask, and this is exactly what the health experts are talking about, that persons who use face masks or hand gloves should make sure that they are appropriately disposed other than dumping them indiscriminately on the roadsides.
The viral video of a man disposing his personal protective equipment indiscriminately caught the attention of the relevant authorities, and this brought about this professional advice.
We're supposed to isolate the waste and put them in several receptacles. All the waste is expected to be incinerated. Yes, we have developed 2 sets of guidelines. One is on how to handle this infectious waste within the context of coronavirus COVID-19.
Kenneth Nanim, NTA News.
And it's time to join our Lagos Network Center, where Dotun is next in line with more stories. Dotun?
With the extension of the deadline for the restriction of flights at the nation's airports, there is an urgency among airport operators to design a post-COVID-19 action plan. Michael Olaleye, who was at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos, reports that an additional 300 British nationals were repatriated to London.
This is the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, the busiest airport in West Africa, now a shadow of itself. With the ambience around here, it is difficult to imagine that this facility handled more than 7 million passengers in 2019. In spite of the closure, there is still one flight available, a British Airways aircraft which conveyed more than 300 British citizens to the United Kingdom. It is the 4th flight since the British government injected £75 million to support repatriation of British citizens, their spouses and dependents. Although flight operations are on hold, but skeletal services are being rendered as the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority is using this window to issue safety guidelines crucial to the post-COVID-19 era.
We do not just allow the airline operators to even go to sleep without having a contact with them. We are regularly having contact with them. We are issuing them circulars as to what to be doing now, even in this lockdown, particularly some trainings of their staff. And so the kind of maintenance that they carry out right at their base. And of course, they too are essential services personnel. They are allowed to come, so they are coming around to carry out some routine maintenance on the airplane.
The mandate before the sector is how to translate its robust plan into action for smooth operations once the pandemic is over. In Lagos, Michael Olaleye, NTA News.
306 persons who violated the lockdown order in Lagos State have been arraigned before the mobile court at the State Criminal Investigation Department, Kwanti Yaba. Abolore Ogbara reports that 88 of the violators are travelers.
The defaulters were arrested by the task force team from various parts of the state while carrying out enforcement of the lockdown order.
They told me yesterday night, around 7:30 in the evening time.
I was going to give out the same palliatives to the people at Oluti.
I'm not night operator, but because of this situation, so I have no option but to do that.
Marcus Drambi is said to always flaunt around the Festac town with different identity cards, which he claimed were given to him by his boss in the police force. He faced the case of impersonation. The violators of the lockdown order pleaded guilty to the charge, and the judge ordered them to pay fines ranging from 5,000 naira to 10,000 naira. The court also ordered them to begin community service immediately for 2 hours. More than 800 defaulters of COVID-19 lockdown order have been arraigned before the mobile court since the beginning of the lockdown directive, while over 2,000 vehicles have been impounded for the same offense. In Lagos, Abolore Ogbara, NTA News.
The celebration of Earth Day is 50. This exciting feat demands that drums roll and series of rallies resonate to amplify the vision of the environmental movement to save the earth. This year, however, the day was marked in a different way because of the coronavirus pandemic. Jennifer Igwe tells us more.
This year, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown the need for more actions to promote a green and healthy environment.
We must act decisively to protect our planet from both the coronavirus and the existential threat of climate disruption. The current crisis is an unprecedented wake-up call. We need to turn the recovery into a real opportunity to do things right for the future.
All around the world, the Earth Day was celebrated devoid of pollution. Now, COVID-19 is indeed redefining the way we do things. In the past, celebrating Mother Earth Day would have been a big event, especially as this year marks the 50th anniversary of the global move. But all around the world, the celebration is online. Tweet chats, webinars, and other social media interaction was the tone for the celebration, and environmentalists emphasized the need for a greener world.
So it means that we really don't have to be all in one place. Communication, I can tell you, is ongoing and more vigorously now, because we see that if we do not take action now, we at the end of the day will lose out. We will be the ones most impacted, as we are seeing right now. The earth, quietly, continuously, consistently, is not stopping.
In this park in Lagos, environment activists gathered to plant trees, one each representing lives that have been lost to the coronavirus pandemic. In Lagos, Jennifer Igwe, NTA News.
And that's it from here. It's back to Awa in Abuja.
Sure, Dotun. But let's take a little break from COVID-19 related stories to look at some issues relating to finance and the economy. The federal government has received the report of the disbursement of the second phase of the Abacha funds recovered in 2017. Solicitor General of the Federation and Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Justice, Dayo Akpata, who received the report on behalf of the federal government, said openness and transparency will continue to be exhibited in the disbursement of the Abacha loot. Femi Okewo reports.
As part of the agreement that saw the release of the second batch of the Abacha loot to Nigeria, civil society organizations were to be commissioned to monitor the disbursement of the recovered loot. It is in this light that on the one-year anniversary of the commencement of the second phase of disbursement, about 20 civil society organizations submitted their report to the federal government on the successes and problems in this phase of disbursement.
It is on the basis of this that we signed the Open Government Partnership and have continued to demonstrate commitment to its underlying principles, especially in the area of asset recoveries.
In view of the current lockdown occasioned by COVID-19, the report was presented through video conferencing, with the Federal Ministry of Justice being the hub, while the CSOs participated from their various centers.
As agreed in the tripartite agreement between the Nigerian government, the Switzerland government, and the World Bank, CSO monitoring was incorporated in that agreement.
The Federal Ministry of Justice is to study the report and make recommendations to the federal government on how to improve further disbursements. In Abuja, Femi Okewo, NTA News.
Meanwhile, in spite of the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, the Federation accounts gained 780.927 billion naira in March 2020, which represents a 34.3% increase over February's collection. Henshaw Ogubike, Director, Information at the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, in a statement said the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee agreed to distribute 661.427 billion naira and transfer 119.550 billion naira to the excess oil revenue account. This brings the balance in the excess crude account to $72.221 million. The 780.926 billion naira generated comprise statutory revenue, value-added tax and exchange gain, with a remarkable increase in taxes. Henshaw added that the April meeting was held through virtual conferencing in line with the social distancing campaign to curb the spread of the coronavirus. And from the economy, we join Zenrate in Jos for measures taken by Plateau State to curtail the spread of COVID-19. Hello.
Hello, Hawa, and thanks for joining us in Jos. To address the yearnings of Plateau State people for palliatives to cushion the effects of the lockdown, the State COVID-19 Palliative Committee has stated its commitment to ensure that the poor and vulnerable will be taken care of. Cameron Kaneng Ladoja reports that the committee briefed the press after its inaugural meeting.
The 25-man Plateau State COVID-19 Palliative Committee has the Deputy Governor, Professor Soni Dioden, as chairman and representation from different segments of society. Sourcing for donations, managing donations, keeping records, and equitable distribution of palliatives are the terms of reference of the committee. To ensure equitable distribution at the local government and ward levels, the local government chairman will chair the committees in their various areas, with representation from women groups, religious, youth, and people with special needs, and the most senior traditional ruler as members. The committee says the palliatives will be effectively distributed to the vulnerable.
The widows, the disabled people, and the aged. So we expect that each committee at each level will focus on these people after an objective identification of the people in the various categories. Once the resources expand, we will also expand the scope of those that are involved.
Also, to ensure efficacy of the committee, there will be 4 subcommittees to cover procurement, donations, transportation and logistics, as well as distribution. The committee says it is committed to making the period of the lockdown and beyond bearable for all residents of the state. In Jos, Ekemeren Kadeng Ladoja, NTA News.
Justice Rita Dashe Selkur of the COVID-19 Mobile Court in Jos, Court 2 in Jos, has sentenced 7 persons and 4 minors to 14-day quarantine with a fine of 10,000 naira each for contravening the lockdown order by the Plateau State government. Bilkisunuhu has details.
A ruling on a 2-count charge, Justice Selkur described the violators as risk-takers who are bound to cause untold hardship to the state in spite of the lockdown order. She said knowing fully well the risks they took by following illegal routes to come into the state is not enough reason not to convict them, since they have contravened the stay-at-home order of the Plateau State government. Delivering her judgment, Justice Selkur ordered that the violators be immediately put under 14 days quarantine at the isolation center in Mangu and pay the sum of 10,000 naira each as fine.
We made an application before the court that the Honorable Court directs that they be kept in an isolation center under the supervision of of medical experts, directly under the watchful eyes of the Plateau State Commissioner for Health, so that for 14 days, for them to undergo the routine medical checkup, at the end of which the next line of action will be taken.
The violators include 1 from Lagos, 2 from Benin, and 4 from Kaduna states, and 4 minors who smuggled their way into Jos and were arrested by vigilantes along the Bauchi-Jos border. In Jos, Bilkisunuhu, NTA News.
That's it from Jos. It's back to Hawa in Abuja for the continuation of Nationwide.
Thanks, Zenret. Moving on in Abuja, relief has come the way of the people of Kogi West Senatorial District as Senator Smart Adeyemi commenced distribution of food items and other commodities to support the poor and vulnerable against COVID-19. Solomon Ayede reports.
The backdrop of the global outbreak of coronavirus, which has killed thousands worldwide, and subsequent restriction of movement to contain its spread in states of the Federation, Kogi inclusive, it became imperative for spirited Nigerians to team up with the government to provide palliatives to cushion the effect of the stay-at-home policy on the populace. It was in line with these that Senator Smart Adeyemi, representing Kogi West Senatorial District in the Red Chamber, commenced the distribution of several hundred bags of rice in his hometown in Iyara, headquarters of Ijomu local government area, for onward distribution to the people of the constituency. Also distributed was 5,000 face masks to further check the spread of COVID-19.
We have preached to them about the need for them to be very more conscious and aware of the deadly disease so-called COVID-19.
And if young people should not go out, and it's also becoming very difficult for them to sustain themselves with food items in their various homes, it becomes very necessary for leaders to come up with palliatives of such.
It's a wonderful gesture. It will be distributed to everybody.
The senator appealed to those in charge of the distribution to do it with equity and fairness, adding that more should be expected from him in days ahead. Solomon Ayedehi, NTA News.
And worried by the increasing cases of COVID-19 on daily basis, the Ooni of Ife, Oba Adeyeye Ogunwusi, is donating 72 motorized fumigation machines to the 36 states of Nigeria, including the Federal Capital Territory, to support the effort at combating the pandemic. Correspondent Rotimi Akomo reports that the machines were inaugurated in Ife town, Osun State.
The fumigation motorized machine, which is capable of fumigating 2 kilometers radius within 20 minutes, is locally built in Ile-Ife to augment government efforts. The modular fumigator machines were test run within the palace before the fumigation exercise began in some major streets of the ancient city of Ile-Ife. Oba Adeyeye Ogunwusi emphasized the need for more innovative ways of fighting the scourge of the coronavirus.
Way and manner fumigation is being done. It has actually become a global mockery. What is being done in the Western world. Pulled all the youths together, maintained all the rules and regulation, and we started fabricating this. We have now decided to give it for free to all the 36 states of this country.
The monarch urged Nigerians to use the current lockdown to come out with ideas that could curb the spread of coronavirus in the world. From Ile-Ife, Rotimi Akamo, NTA News.
And Chinyeye is on standby in our Enugu Network Center for more reports on Nationwide. Hello, you're on.
Thank you, Hawa. Good evening and welcome to Enugu. Anambra State government has discharged its COVID-19 index case in the state as his second result tested negative. Governor Willie Obiano, who announced this during a news briefing, directed the compulsory use of face masks by the people of the state. Ndem Kalu completes the report.
The index case was discharged after his second result tested negative. Governor Obiano stated that samples of 39 people who had direct contact with the index case have been submitted for tests, while commending the people for their cooperation.
This is to ensure that we do not need any loopholes in our fight against this pandemic. I'll keep you posted on the outcome of the test once the results are out. However, the danger is not over yet. I count on your support and commitment as we reach the finishing line to ensure that we are firmly on track here.
The governor, who announced compulsory use of face mask by any individual before coming out, maintained that all boundaries with neighboring communities remain closed as intercity and intercommunity movements in the state remain suspended. He noted that food markets in the state are to open only on Tuesdays and Fridays.
From today onward, it has become compulsory to wear a face mask in Anambra State.
Citizens are urged to continue to adhere to government directives while maintaining high personal hygiene. From Aguleri, Ndem Kalu, NTA News.
Students and pupils in Enugu State are taking advantage of the ongoing radio lessons recently introduced by the Enugu State government for skills children. This followed the closure of schools and lockdown occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic. The report.
Cultism can be seen as practices or activities of a group of people who have extreme religious belief.
This is a lesson on civic education running on the radio airwaves for junior secondary school students in Enugu State. Other subjects being aired include English language, mathematics, physics, basic science, French, Igbo language, among others. The Enugu Radio School, powered by the Enugu State Government in partnership with Radio Nigeria Coal City FM, was organized to help the pupils and students in this period of lockdown against the COVID-19 pandemic, especially for those preparing to take the WAEC and Common Entrance examinations.
The teachers from different schools in Enugu come to Radio Nigeria to teach on radio subjects for students at home in order to engage them and make them busy.
And as a director, thought it was wise for this venture to come up, which the children at home are benefiting immensely.
The lessons run for an hour from 11 o'clock in the morning to 12 noon daily for primary school pupils and from 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening for secondary school students. The radio lesson is also streamlined on the social media platform at Enugu Radio School. It is hoped that residents of Enugu would avail their children and wards this golden opportunity to learn by hooking up to the various media. In Enugu, Chineye Nwoye, NTA. And that is it from Enugu. Nationwide continues with Hawa in Abuja after this commercial break. Do stay.
Today, the cessation of movement, physical distancing measures, and the prohibition of mass gatherings remain the most efficient and effective way of reducing the transmission of the virus. By sustaining these measures, combined with extensive testing and contact tracing, we can take control and limit the spread of the disease.
It's time to take responsibility. So I'm staying home, watching videos and learning as well. We are all aware of the pandemic hitting the world today. The COVID-19 virus is real. A big thank you to all our health workers, doctors, nurses, everybody fighting this pandemic in their own way. Please stay home, save lives. Prevention is better than cure. Stay responsible. It's time to take responsibility. So I'm staying home, watching videos and learning as well. We are all aware of the pandemic hitting the world today. The COVID-19 virus is real. A big thank you to all our health workers, doctors, nurses, everybody fighting this pandemic in their own way. Please stay home, save lives. Prevention is better than cure. Stay responsible.
Over the past few seasons, Airtel Touching Lives has helped to empower and uplift thousands of Nigerians. And this season was no different.
People are really suffering.
I still have a hope.
I know that God doesn't leave things halfway.
Thank you to all our viewers for inviting us into your homes and sharing in our journey as we continue to change lives.
There is a lot of fake news and report circulating, especially on social media, on the coronavirus. Do not believe or partake in the spread of these fake reports. If it is not on the official website or news from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, disregard such report. Only together can we beat this virus. Only together can we overcome this pandemic. Follow the instructions and guidelines provided to combat this virus. Most importantly, stay at home. Self-isolate, regardless of your status. The virus doesn't move unless we move. Let us work together to better Nigeria. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Thanks for rejoining Nationwide. Supporting the national response to COVID-19 is now a priority, and the Nigerian Air Force is enhancing its aeromedical evacuation systems in response to the national health emergency. Defense correspondent Nadatu Tijani reports.
It
It's a matter of life and death for this patient being evacuated to the Nigerian Air Force C-130 cargo aircraft. Though a simulation, the NAF says it is not taking any chances as this scenario could play out in real life if more cases of COVID-19 are confirmed.
In the past, we used to evacuate patients with these aircrafts, but we didn't have stretchers and other life support equipment like we have them here today. And this is not only for COVID-19, it can be wounded soldiers in the battlefield.
This is why the nurses and flight crew have been trained in aeromedical evacuation. I'm in the Charlie 130, the C-130 Hercules cargo aircraft, which can carry anything from trucks to troops, but has now been converted to a mobile air hospital, so to speak, with a life support system, a ventilator for patients suspected of having COVID-19, which can carry 76 patients to various isolation centers across the country. Meanwhile, the Armed Forces of Nigeria, through the Directorate of Defense Media Operations, says it has destroyed compounds housing Boko Haram terrorists through its Air Task Force of Operation Lafiya Dole at Pulawa in Borno State. And troops of Operation Hadarindaji have neutralized more than 20 bandits at Zirimi local government area in Zamfara state. Unfortunately, 4 of the soldiers paid the ultimate price in the encounter. And in Lagos, the Nigerian Navy ship Bini has rescued a Beninois crew after its fishing vessel caught fire. Naja'atu Tijani, NTA News.
And still on COVID-19, the control measures put in place at the international borders following the federal government's restriction order have in no little way stemmed the importation of the coronavirus into the country. From the waterways to the hinterlands, officers and men of the Nigeria Immigration Service are not leaving anything to chance as they intensify surveillance around entry and exit points in Cross River State. Umar Basi Edit has more.
With a presidential order that all borders should remain closed, the Cross River State Command of the Nigeria Immigration Service has made the patrol of the borders as well as the hinterlands a daily exercise. Beyond enforcing security, the sensitization of the rural communities is also a duty carried out by the officers.
One of the things we noticed while we were on patrol in some of the communities was that they were not even aware that there's anything called coronavirus.
Cross River State has a peculiar terrain, talking about the waterways and the creeks. And so to tackle emerging challenges, the Nigerian Immigration Service says it has deployed more personnel to the creeks to ensure that the borders are well secured. The command had earlier arrested 13 persons, including 8 foreigners, for attempting to defy the federal government's restriction order. In Calabar, Umar Basidate, NTA News.
And still staying with Cross River, the state government has started the recruitment of 8,000 unemployed youth as part of measures to cushion the economic hardship caused by the COVID-19. Paul Abel reports that the exercise is holding in Calabar and other local government areas across the state.
The palliatives being distributed through traditional and religious leaders are meant for the poor and elderly, but for those within the ages of 18 and 35, the policy of the state government is to enable them to be self-reliant even under the lockdown. The job placement covers the agro-allied industries in the state, namely agriculture, environment, security, among others, and expectant beneficiaries say this is laudable.
The little token given to me will help me and my family to sustain.
God is going to really bless the governor for bringing this platform.
The state government says keeping youths without engaging them meaningfully throughout the lockdown and beyond is a potential time bomb.
We have so many industries we have built, and so we're doing mass recruitment to those industries. But 5,000 will go into agriculture, cultivation and raising of new seedlings, new propagules.
The 30,000 naira monthly job for successful applicants is a permanent one.
The beneficiaries here are not only appreciative of the fact that these will provide food for them on their table, but it will also create security in the state. In Calabar, Paul Abel, NTA News.
And from Calabar, we go to Kano, where the state government has begun the distribution of foodstuff to less privileged as part of measures to cushion the effects of the lockdown order imposed to contain the spread of the COVID-19. Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, during the flag-off ceremony, disclosed that 50,000 households are targeted in the first batch of the exercise. Abdullahi Mustafa reports.
The assorted food items were sourced through donations from individuals and organizations in response to Kano State Government's appeal for support to the less privileged. The first consignment is to be distributed to 50,000 households across the 44 local government areas of the state.
For each polling units, we have taken 4 poorest of the poor households. So this distribution.
Each household is to receive a 25-kilogram bag of rice, cooking oil, carton of spaghetti, and 2,000 naira. The items were handed over to local government representatives for onward distribution to the targeted beneficiaries. In Kano, Abdullahi Mustafa, NTA News.
A report just in says Nigeria has secured the release of 60 of her nationals serving various jail terms in Tanzania prisons. The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, in a statement by its head of media and public relations, Abdul Rahman Balogun, says efforts are underway to secure the release of the remaining 13 Nigerians. The commission says most of the convicts were arrested for drug-related offences, while a few of the offences bordered on violation of immigration law. The statement adds that arrangements are being made by the Nigerian mission in Tanzania for the repatriation of the released prisoners. Nigeria joined other countries in making a plea for amnesty for prisoners during this COVID-19 period. Sticking to the right attitude, experts have advised Nigerians is the best way to contain COVID-19. They were speaking on NTA's current affairs program, Moment for Thought, as they stressed government's effort on projections for a stable economy.
The effect of COVID-19 on our education is something we are going to reap in the future. We have to brace ourselves. We have to prepare and not to pretend that it is only a health issue.
We have 3.5 trillion on the table from the CBN, 774 local governments, 1,000 jobs per local government. We're targeting employment. So I'm quite happy with that.
The program comes up tonight at 12 midnight on the network service of the NTA. Moving on, if there is any time to take climate-sensitive action, that time is now, with the coronavirus pandemic proving to humanity that man can limit his destruction of nature. NTA Fine Face in this report examines the imperative of action to sustain gains recorded by the ecosystem under global lockdown within the framework of the World Earth Day 2020.
In the words of Ni Yoshindare, a poet, the earth is ours to plow and plant. Our earth is an unopened greenhouse, a bustling barn in some far uncharted jungle, a distant gem in a rough unhappy dust. This earth is ours to work, not to waste, ours to man, not to maim. This earth is ours to plow, not to plunder. These words bemoan the attitude of man who plunders, exploits and maims the earth for profit and pleasure.
Our exploitative use of the ecosystem has led to reduced options for future use temporarily or permanently, as well as disruptions of biogeochemical cycles, as well as emerging infectious diseases like we're witnessing now.
Like Oshundare, the global community speaking against the beleaguered natural world laid waste by capital pursuits. World Earth Day celebrated for 50 years now, mobilizes humanity to protect the earth.
It's a time to determine that we're going to halt deforestation. A time we're going to determine that we're not going to carry on polluting in the way we've been doing in the past. And in fact, it's time for Nigeria to dramatically shift away from dependence on petroleum resources for national revenue and as well as for power generation.
The theme for 2020, climate action, presents opportunities for man to rethink his actions to protect rather than plunder the earth. And COVID-19 is forcing the world to do this.
There is really so much that we can do as stakeholders to ensure that Mother Earth is preserved. This is the only planet that we have where we actually can live. So it's up to us to ensure that we preserve this earth.
For those who still intend to destroy the ecosystem, like Oshundare, we ask, are they of this earth who live that earth may die? But for those who would act to protect the earth, we take comfort in the assurance of the poet that our earth will see again. On NTA, Fine Face, NTA News.
Thanks, Sonengie. And the Benue State Governor, Samuel Otom, has ordered the complete facelift of the General Hospital Boko for efficient and effective healthcare delivery, especially during this period of coronavirus pandemic. He gave the directive when he inspected the COVID-19 isolation center donated to the state government. Charles Abba completes the report.
General Hospital Boko, which was established in 1975, has continued to cater for the health needs of the community and its environs. As a proactive initiative to tame the tide of the pandemic, a team of health practitioners made their contribution by the donation of an isolation center. Governor Samuel Otom, who appreciated the gesture, made a personal donation of 5 million naira to the project and directed the Commissioner for Health and Human Services, Dr. Sunday Ongbabo, and that of Housing and Urban Development, Epe Ogbu, to immediately evaluate the cost of dilapidation of the facility for onward submission to the state government for necessary action.
Similar hospitals in Benue State that have not been given attention for over 40 years still exists. But we had to start from somewhere.
The governor also ordered people encroaching into the hospital's land to keep off or face the wrath of the law. Meanwhile, the governor also inspected the ongoing work on the Tortue Palace and commended the quality of job done and pledged to do all within government's resources to ensure that the project is completed within 2 months.
This is a very noble project that should be completed for the paramount ruler to settle down so that he can discharge his duties.
The money is not easy by now, so whatever the governor can arrange with him, let him go ahead and make the people proud.
The contract for the project, which was awarded 2 years ago, has reached 90% completion. From Boko, Charles Abba, NTA News.
And from Benue to Taraba, where we understand that there is high level of compliance in Jalingo, the state capital, with total lockdown directed by the state government. Joseph Hussein reports that the order is, however, indefinite.
Taraba State is moving from partial lockdown to total lockdown. The state government has directed that all should stay at home with the exemption of essential duty workers. The lockdown commenced 22nd April 2020 from 11 o'clock in the night.
This has become necessary in view of the increasing number of confirmed cases in our neighboring states. In spite of the fact that we have not recorded any confirmed case in Taraba State, we must not be complacent.
The lockdown, however, allows the public a window between 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesdays and Saturdays to make essential household purchases.
All violators of this directive will be arrested and prosecuted. Vehicles found on the road during the period of lockdown will be impounded. A mobile court will be established to promptly try offenders at various points of entry into the state.
In preparation for the isolation period, Jalingo, the state capital, witnessed mad rush with increasing number of vehicles on the roads and markets witnessing beehive of activities. In Jalingo, Joseph Saundo 10, NTA News.
Necessity, it is said, is the mother of invention. Here is one good example, though not an invention in the true sense of the word. Following the continuous lockdown of courts and other judicial activities in the country, the National Judicial Council has held its 45th council meeting through video conferencing, with all the 24 members of council participating from their various jurisdictions across the country. Judiciary correspondent Femi Okewo monitored the meeting from the NJC headquarters in Abuja.
This virtual meeting of the National Judicial Council has been a long way coming. Indeed, the process was started since 2012, and the situation in the country or in the world generally, the pandemic, has triggered this and made it faster. Now, for the first time in the history of Nigeria's judiciary, the administrative body that administers judiciary across the country is having a meeting in Abuja.
Good morning, my lord.
Presided over by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, the National Judicial Council is the highest administrative organ of the nation's judiciary. This meeting is a regular one in the running of the nation's judiciary. But in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the items on the agenda of the meeting would be to fine-tune the use of virtual and internet processes for the circulation of court processes and judgments. But for now, the meeting and the administration of the judiciary in Nigeria does not have to draw the physical attendance of members. Like in the case of this council meeting, only 5 out of the 24-member council were physically present in Abuja, along with the secretary of the council, Gambo Sali. Other members just remained in their jurisdiction and were part of the meeting through virtual processes. In Abuja, Femi Okewo, NTA News.
And the weather prospects for Friday is next. And that's Nationwide today. We thank you for watching. Do remember to stay safe. Good evening.